Dennis Collins never needed a camera to build something worth keeping. The world just didn't realize that until the doors started to crack open. For years, the version of Collins that television offered made complete sense. He showed up on Fast and Loud alongside Richard Rawlings, hunting barn finds across the country and flipping rare American muscle for serious money. He ran Collins Brothers Jeep out of Wiley, Texas, and turned it into one of the most respected classic Jeep restoration operations anywhere in the country. A YouTube channel followed, then more fans, more high-profile acquisitions filmed under bright showroom lights. He talked straight, dressed sharp, and made the entire business of collecting look like something anyone could follow. That was the version he offered the public. What he kept back is considerably harder to explain and considerably more interesting. Behind the television appearances and the viral flips, Collins spent years assembling a second collection. Not the kind that lives in a showroom or under a YouTube thumbnail, but the kind locked behind a keypad entry, inside a climate-controlled room where batteries sit on trickle charge, tires are shielded from dry rot, and every vehicle is cataloged in private ledgers rather than online registries. No placards, no guided tours, no social media tags. Most employees at Collins Brothers Jeep have reportedly never been allowed inside. Richard Rawlings, his longtime friend and television co-star, hasn't reportedly seen every vehicle stored there. And that's exactly how Collins keeps it, because the collection was never designed for an audience. It was designed for permanence. What makes this impossible to dismiss is the specific nature of what reportedly lives inside that room. VIN number 0001 vehicles. Manufacturer prototype builds that were scheduled for destruction and never destroyed. Ghost cars carrying chassis numbers matching nothing in any public database. A military vehicle so far outside normal collector channels that even experienced people in the industry stop talking when they hear the description. Collins doesn't operate like a hobbyist with surplus money and free weekends. He operates like someone who understood decades ago that the most valuable thing in automotive history isn't the car everybody wants. It's the one nobody was ever supposed to keep. The VIN number 0001 obsession alone separates him from nearly every serious collector alive. These are the first vehicles off the assembly line, the ones manufacturers typically hold for executives, use in promotional campaigns, or quietly destroy to prevent uncomfortable precedents. Sources with direct knowledge of the collection confirm at least 2 genuine first VIN vehicles under soft covers in the private garage, including a first-year Ford Mustang and a prototype BMW built originally for internal manufacturer testing. Neither is a rebadge, neither carries questionable paperwork. They're authenticated originals that have never appeared at auction, never been filmed, and never entered any known collector database. The 1965 Mustang GT Fastback with a VIN predating Ford's first public showroom release is where the story becomes genuinely difficult to rationalize. Its acquisition trail splits into competing accounts, one pointing to a rescue from a corporate test facility, another describing a private estate sale that changed hands exactly once before Collins acquired it. Either way, the car sits completely outside public registry lists. Collins has never auctioned it, never filmed it, never publicly acknowledged how it arrived under his roof. Owning something that significant, he seems to understand, doesn't require a press release. The car's existence is the statement, and the silence surrounding it only compounds its weight in collector circles. Carroll Shelby's name connects to another vehicle in the same space, a vintage GT500 carrying Shelby's signature etched directly inside the glove box. Not a signed certificate, not a placard with authentication paperwork. The signature on the panel itself, personalized in a way that separates it from the dozens of Shelby-attributed items cycling through auction houses every year on documentation that ranges from solid to entirely suspect. A prototype BMW sits nearby, built for internal testing during a period when manufacturers were experimenting with configurations they weren't prepared to share publicly, and that machine has never appeared in any catalog either. The prototype section of the collection runs considerably deeper than a few vehicles. Under covers in the same building are cars with no manufacturer logos, unusual body proportions, and engineering that reads as years ahead of whatever era produced them. One source describes a car with Ford experimental badging, equipped with active suspension systems that never appeared on any consumer model anywhere in the lineup. Another account points to a Dodge carrying design language that never reached the public, possibly a scrapped concept from the early 2000s, with styling cues suggesting the company was exploring a creative direction it ultimately abandoned entirely. These vehicles didn't reach Collins through auction houses or dealer networks. Retired engineers made quiet phone calls, private collections dissolved under NDAs, and their contents moved through relationships built over decades on trust and reputation. Automakers discourage private ownership of prototype hardware because it exposes technology that wasn't market-ready, design directions abandoned for competitive reasons, and ideas that complicate a brand's carefully controlled public narrative. Collins isn't publicizing any of it. He's keeping it sealed, climate-controlled, and out of every conversation he can manage. Then there are the ghost cars, the ones with no VIN traceable to any DMV database, no registration history, no documentation of any kind. Collectors use that term loosely, but in Collins's garage, it apparently describes specific vehicles with real histories and complete absence of paper trails. One of them is an early General Motors prototype with no badge, no plates, and a chassis number matching nothing in any public record. The body reportedly blends design elements from the Corvette C4 and the Pontiac Banshee, a combination placing its origins inside GM's internal concept development during a period when the company was pushing hard into experimental engineering. What's beneath the bodywork reportedly gets stranger still. Aerospace-grade aluminum panels, wiring that doesn't correspond to standard GM schematics, and digital components that seem completely out of place for the era in which the vehicle was built. Some accounts connect it to government fleet testing or defense contractor development, though nothing has been confirmed publicly, and Collins has never acknowledged the car's existence in any interview or video. A second ghost car carries even more conflicting descriptions. A blacked-out Mustang variant with a track width and front profile unlike any documented production model, with no branding visible anywhere on the body, sits somewhere in the collection. Whether it originated as a Shelby prototype that never survived internal review or was commissioned to a private specification for an undisclosed purpose, nobody outside Collins's immediate circle has answered. He's never addressed it on camera. He's never let it appear in any video background. Possessing vehicles officially listed as destroyed or that exist entirely outside any legal title chain requires either extraordinary connections built over decades or extraordinary discipline in keeping things quiet. Collins appears to have spent years developing both. Celebrity Provenance in Collins's garage operates entirely differently than it does in the public auction world. A Cadillac connected to John F. Kennedy's time as a senator, not the famous presidential limousine, but a private coupe, carries original title records, placing it in a Boston holding yard registered to the Kennedy estate. Collins has reportedly never publicized this acquisition, and the reasoning, according to someone close to his operation, had nothing to do with market value. Some cars shouldn't be paraded, he said, they should be preserved. That position extends without exception to a Porsche 911 with California DMV archive records linking it directly to Solar Productions, Steve McQueen's production company, during the early 1970s. It's a street machine rather than a film car, and it occupies space near the Shelby GT500. An Elvis Presley Cadillac Eldorado with pink-trimmed seats, custom from the factory, and an ownership trail running through Graceland sits elsewhere in the collection, tied to the singer's final touring years. None of these vehicles has appeared in a public sale. None have been photographed for editorial use. The celebrity connection, for Collins, doesn't appear to be a selling point. It's a reason to be more protective. The military vehicle shifts the conversation into territory that even seasoned collectors struggle to contextualize properly. Collins built his public reputation on Jeeps, and Collins Brothers Jeep stands as one of the most accomplished Jeep restoration operations in the country. But the Jeep reportedly sitting under a military tarp in the back of his private garage carries no civilian counterpart and no documentation anyone outside the facility has been able to locate. Sources describe it as a Gulf War-era Special Forces prototype outfitted with military-grade suspension, modular armor attachment points, and an experimental drivetrain configuration, possibly diesel-electric, that predated consumer hybrid technology by years. Some accounts connect it to the DARPA Silent Transport Initiative, developed for special operations mobility in desert terrain. Others tie it to a short-lived NATO technology sharing program from the same period. Collins has never mentioned the vehicle publicly, never allowed it to appear in any known video frame, and military historians who've heard secondhand descriptions of it say they can't place it within any documented program. That absence of a trail is precisely what makes it consistent with everything else housed behind those keypads. The deeper rooms reportedly contain builds that may never reach any public audience at all. A one-of-one Mopar prototype with experimental driveline technology developed by Chrysler before the 2008 financial collapse sits among them, featuring an aluminum block, composite body panels, and digital instrumentation years ahead of whatever production models the company was releasing at the time. Collins reportedly made a personal commitment to the vehicle's original designer never to commercialize it, which means it may remain in that room indefinitely, not abandoned, but protected in the most deliberate sense of that word. A second vehicle, referred to among insiders only as the Forbidden Car, carries contradictory descriptions that even people who've heard about it can't reconcile. Former law enforcement hardware carrying surveillance technology that was never publicly released. A prototype sports car from a manufacturer that no longer exists. Collins has given no indication he intends to clarify either account, and the people who know say he won't. His reasons for keeping everything sealed are layered in ways that don't reduce to a single explanation. Security plays a role, because publicizing the location of hardware this rare would be an invitation. Timing likely plays another, since people close to the industry speculate that Collins is building toward a private museum or long-form documentary release that would frame the collection properly rather than reduce it to a series of reveal moments. But the third reason surfaces consistently in conversations among people who understand automotive law and government property regulations. Some of these vehicles carry legal complexity that publicity would activate. Prototypes listed as officially destroyed and later found in private hands raise questions from manufacturers. Government hardware and civilian possession raises entirely different ones. Not showing the cars keeps those questions dormant, and Collins appears to understand that strategically maintained silence carries more long-term value than any auction record his rivals have ever set. What he assembled over decades, one quiet acquisition at a time, is something that major public museums don't hold equivalents for. This is automotive history in its most fragile form. The vehicles that nearly didn't survive, the ones that manufacturer policy, government protocol, or simple institutional neglect almost erased permanently. Fast and Loud ended, the cameras moved on, and Collins kept going, sealing more doors, pulling more covers, letting the collection grow in rooms the rest of the automotive world will likely never enter. He didn't outspend his rivals on the open market. He outlasted them in the spaces nobody else thought to look, and the full weight of what he's built there hasn't reached anyone yet.